Well, in the U.S., the clock is already ticking on an FBI probe into Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. The U.S. president ordered the agency to examine sexual misconduct allegations leveled against the judge. But they don't have long to perform their check. In fact, Trump says the update on Kavanaugh's file must be completed in, quote, less than a week. Armed with the new information, the full Senate could then vote as early as next weekend on whether to confirm Kavanaugh. The delay means the U.S. Supreme Court bench will begin its next session on Monday with only 8 judges, and that makes a stalemate on a ruling very possible. Well, let's turn now to Stephen D'Souza in New York. He has more on the twists and turns on the Kavanaugh story that's both gripped and divided Americans. So, Stephen, as we await Donald Trump's latest rally that's going to take place a little later today, what more do we know about the FBI inquiry that's been ordered into Kavanaugh?
That's right. You know, this has really gripped a nation, and now all eyes are on this FBI inquiry. Not really an investigation, not a criminal investigation. So we understand that they won't have subpoena power. They won't be able to compel people to speak with them. So that could limit exactly what the FBI is able to get. But it's going to be doing essentially an expanded background check into Brett Kavanaugh, looking specifically at the allegations made by Christine Blasey Ford that he sexually assaulted her at a party more than 30 years ago. The FBI is going to be looking to speak with people that Ford says were at the party all those many years ago. Particularly one person they really want to speak to is Mark Judge, the friend of Brett Kavanaugh. And Judge has indicated through his lawyers that he is willing to cooperate with the FBI investigation. Now, the New York Times is also saying that Deborah Ramirez, another woman who has made allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, her story is also going to be looked at by the FBI. She's alleged that Brett Kavanaugh exposed himself to her during a party when they both attended Yale. So a lot of interest, no doubt, in this investigation and just what the FBI comes back with.
So many people following that in the days to come. But obviously this issue, as you said right up top, is getting a lot of attention in the United States. Tell us about the people that you have met. What have they been telling you about all this?
That's right. I was out with protesters yesterday as the moment happened when Jeff Flake, the senator, said that he would only vote for a nomination if the FBI did have a chance to look into things. And they worried that he was just doing this for political cover. But they were saying if you set aside all of the sexual assault allegations against Kavanaugh, if you just look at his demeanor during the last hearing, it shows that he is not fit for the Supreme Court. Take a listen to what one protester told me.
He's not appropriate for the court. He should withdraw his nomination. I'm certain they can find another guy just as conservative who the evangelicals will love, who maybe could behave a little bit more like a judge. But I was most disconcerted by his ranting and raving and his clear partisanship. He attacked the Democrats directly. He accused the Clintons of doing this. That was a little scary.
Now, just going back to the FBI investigation, the biggest challenge for them, apart from dealing with the cobwebs in people's memory about something that happened more than 30 years ago, is that, of course, they have that deadline, the deadline imposed by the president, requested by Jeff Flake, that this will be done by next Friday. So they have to get all of their work done by that time, and it remains to be seen whether they can unearth anything new in these cases that would put perhaps a country that's on edge at ease and convince a lot of fence-sitting senators.
We ought to do what we can to make sure that we do all due diligence with a nomination this important.
Well, for more on what this investigation could entail, we're now joined by former FBI investigator Jack Clunan. He is in Millsboro, Delaware. Jack, thank you for joining us again.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here.
You know, I want to begin here with what this investigation will be looking at. What are the limits in terms of scope of this kind of investigation?
Well, remember that Judge Kavanaugh has been the subject of 6 prior background investigations, and I think it's important to remind your viewers that this is a background investigation. It's not a criminal investigation. So witnesses or people who have an interest in this come forward on a voluntary basis. The FBI cannot compel them to testify, if you will, or provide statements. So I think the focus of this, albeit limited, is to further corroborate Dr. Ford's story that she was sexually assaulted by Judge Kavanaugh, and the primary source of information for that, aside from Dr. Ford, is the other person that she alleges was in the room, which is Mr. Judge. And I think that's the focal point of it. Will Mr. Judge say anything different than what he said publicly? And that's the big question.
So let's talk a bit more about that. You mentioned Mark Judge. Of course, that is, again, who Blasey Ford said was in the room when all of this took place back when she and Kavanaugh were in high school. How significant is his testimony going to be, as he's already said he will cooperate with the FBI?
He said he will cooperate, but he's also stated publicly that he has no recollection. And he's admitted that he has had problems with alcoholism in the past. He's a recovered alcoholic. He has very serious drug issues. So is it possible, is it likely that he's going to change his story and somehow 36 years later he is going to come up with something that would be considered a game changer that will alter the investigation as we know it today? And I think that's highly unlikely. Will the executive branch, that is the White House and the White House counsel's office, allow the FBI to question Ms. Ramirez or some of the other women that have come forward? That's the big question, because right now it's not clear in my mind and others as to what the relevant accusations are. It's a bit ambiguous. But the FBI, remember, will start to pull a few threads. They will try to corroborate more of what Dr. Ford has said. And this is not an investigation that's going to reach a conclusion. The FBI is going to provide the executive and the Senate Judiciary Committee the statements. It will be incumbent upon the White House and the Senate Judiciary Committee and its members to reach its conclusions. There will be no editorializing. Those reports, and the agents are doing it and writing those reports, they will stand on unambiguously alone. But make no doubt about it, there is a bright light shining on the FBI in this matter, and it's particularly bright because of the Russian investigation, because of the way the White House has, and particularly the president, has talked about the FBI. So it's not going to be a winning situation for the FBI, no matter how it comes out.
Not a winning situation for them, as you say. So how much of this, at the end of the day, is going to be political versus what the FBI might find in its investigation?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the FBI will be the political football that gets kicked around. It's not going to please everybody, the outcome. But as I said, the witness statements are going to stand on their own. There will be no, in other words, determination as to what they may prove, for example, that Dr. Blasey Ford was consistent in her statement, and it may also prove that Judge Kavanaugh has made some statements that are inconsistent. And if there are inconsistent statements, such as things that they might determine from looking at his calendar, things they might hear from his former roommates at Yale University, issues with respect to his drinking, and those sorts of things, that could change the dynamic a little bit. But remember, the core issue here is the sexual assault. Mm-hmm. It's not the drinking. There'll be some inconsistent statements perhaps that come up, but then you can attribute that to 36 years in time, and that's an awfully long time to reconstruct.
Jack,
Again,
let me jump in. Let me jump in, and I apologize because we're running out of time here. But you do mention, of course, this is about sexual assault, and I want to call up here a board on which we've put the pictures of the three women who've now gone public as accusers of Brett Kavanaugh. Christine Blasey Ford, of course, making the testimony on Thursday in front of the committee in the U.S. Senate. Will the FBI investigate the other allegations as well as part of this?
I certainly hope so, and I think they will push for it.
You think they will push for it? Why?
Because I think it's critical not only for their credibility, but for what's at stake here. We're talking about a lifelong appointment to the United States Supreme Court. These are two women who have come forward. They've been judged to be credible, and I think the FBI will push for it. If they don't push for it, the FBI will be questioned about its objectivity.